As police sources tell ABC News, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson is dead after being shot in Midtown Manhattan.
By now, most of you have heard about the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. The story has shocked the nation, sparking intense debates about our current healthcare system, the morality of profit-driven healthcare, and even the lengths people are willing to get out their frustration. But in some corners of the internet, I've seen a troubling trend: sympathy for the murderer and disdain for the victim. Today, I want to break this down, not to defend the healthcare system, but to break down and explain how it works, where it fails, and what we as a society can do to address it. I have a unique perspective by having a master's in health administration, and I've worked in the healthcare consulting industry and now work as a hospital administrator. We'll cover three main areas today: the role of the healthcare system, Brian Thompson and the backlash against him, and what this tragedy reveals about our society's values and how we can move forward constructively. This isn't about defending a corporation. It's about understanding a systemic issue and why violence or placing the blame on one person will never be a solution. First, let's break down how healthcare works in this country. Providers like hospitals, doctors' offices, and clinics are actually the ones delivering the care. Insurers like United Healthcare act as intermediaries and represent patients. Their role is to negotiate rates with providers, determine what they'll cover, and ultimately control how much of it they're paying out. It's not a perfect system, but it's the one we've collectively chosen, either by voting for certain people or not voting for other people, or not voting at all or addressing these concerns. Many people think health insurers are inherently evil because they deny claims or require prior authorizations. But here's the reality: if insurers approved every request, premiums would skyrocket and the cost would be unsustainable for healthcare. It's a balancing act. While it's frustrating for patients, insurers are businesses operating in a flawed system. The idea that these companies are evil ignores the fact that they're just one side in a two-sided equation. Providers often have to charge hefty rates to make up for uninsured patients or to maintain profitability themselves in a competitive market. Meanwhile, insurers have to control those costs, which can result in difficult decisions about coverage. It's a vicious cycle. Let me say this again: this isn't about defending corporations. It's about recognizing that our current healthcare system is a product of societal choices. If we want something different, we have to change the rules of the game, and that's looking at the government. We should not be vilifying individuals who are operating within a system. Let's talk about Brian Thompson, the man behind the headline death. Brian wasn't born into wealth, and he grew up in small town Iowa. He went to the local state school, started his career at a Big Four accounting firm, much like I did, and spent 20 years climbing the ranks of United Healthcare. He didn't create the healthcare industry. He didn't own or create the company. He was just someone who worked hard, provided for his family, and achieved success in this field. Yet now, some people are celebrating his death as some sort of victory over the healthcare system. It definitely is not. United Health Group, United Healthcare's parent company, is still going to be a $500 billion company no matter who's at the helm. They are denying claims today, just as they were last week and the week before and the week before that. They're going to seek out as many ways as possible to be profitable for their shareholders and their leaders. The only difference today from a month ago is they've beefed up security for all their leadership. Brian Thompson's death does nothing to fix healthcare. It doesn't lower costs or improve access. What it does is leave a wife without her husband and 2 children without a father. And that's something we should all be able to agree is wrong. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. I usually talk about money, career development, and occasionally social topics like this. If you find this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I put out all my videos. Let's talk about the slippery slope we're on when it comes to targeting individuals within the system as a form of protest or outrage. The murder of Brian Thompson raises some deeply uncomfortable questions about where we, as a society, draw the line when it comes to assigning blame. If we accept the idea that it's morally justifiable to assassinate a CEO because they represent a system you despise, then where does that logic end? Does it stop at the CEO's office? What if they've only been out the job for just a day? What if they've recently been promoted and they were sub C-suite before this? Does it extend to every employee at the company? What about entry-level analysts or the custodians who clean the floors? What about people like me who've consulted for companies like United Healthcare? Does simply being adjacent to the system make me a target? It sounds absurd when you lay it out like this, but that's exactly the point. Once you start justifying violence against one person in a system, you can open the door to endless rationalizations about who deserves to be punished. It's a descent into moral chaos. Here's another layer to consider. The largest health insurer in the US isn't even United Healthcare. It's Medicare, run by the federal federal government. And Medicare denies claims too, sometimes for the exact same reasons that private insurers do. Or was Brian Thompson's salary the big issue here? There are many doctors in this country, and I've seen their financial statements where they're getting paid more than Brian Thompson was. Aren't they profiting from this system? What about medical schools who artificially constrain the number of students they admit? And that leads to issues in the supply of doctors, raising the prices and incomes for those doctors. What about the role of medical schools in the shortage of doctors? Are their deans complicit in this process? All my family members are healthcare providers. Are they part of this? This is the kind of moral decay that should alarm us. And who gets to decide what industries are fair game in an action like this? Are we only targeting healthcare CEOs? Or does this extend to other sectors we find problematic? What about the CEOs of oil companies or tech giants that keep kids addicted to phones? Or defense contractors? If this becomes the new norm for settling societal grievances, we're heading down a path that's not only dangerous but counterproductive. It shifts the focus away from actual problems toward individual acts of retribution that solve basically nothing. Like I said before, Brian Thompson did not create this healthcare system. He wasn't UHC's first CEO, and he won't be its last. Nothing meaningful has changed except the needless loss of life. If we want real change, we need to focus on systemic reform, not targeting individuals who are simply operating within a system we have collectively chosen to maintain. Assigning blame to one person or one company might feel satisfying in the moment, but it won't fix what's really broken here. And until we come to grips with that, we're going to keep spinning our wheels in anger without ever making progress. But the backlash against Brian Thompson isn't just misguided, it's dangerous. So let's shift our focus onto the person who committed this act. This wasn't someone who was destitute, desperate, or left broken by the healthcare system. This was an Ivy League graduate from a wealthy family, a family that ironically runs healthcare facilities for the elderly.
He ended up buying 2 country clubs, started a nursing home company, and bought WCBM Radio, a well-known conservative talk station in Baltimore. Family members also run a family foundation that has nearly $4.5 million in assets and were longtime benefactors of Loyola University, Maryland. The suspect's father today runs the family business.
Facilities that, by many accounts, have terrible ratings in quality of care. If you're going to criticize a system, start by criticizing your own family members profiting from it. The killer had every privilege. He grew up wealthy.
Well, they donated money for the pools, the swimming center at Loyola University. It bears their name. That's a huge amount of donating to get that.
He had access to some of the best education and came from a family involved in the healthcare industry themselves. He had the resources and connections to potentially influence working towards meaningful change. Instead, he chose violence. And even more bizarrely, he didn't even have United Healthcare's insurance. And by his own admission online, his spine surgery was smooth and it alleviated his pain. This wasn't someone failed by the system. It was from someone who by all accounts benefit from the system. What's clear now is this act wasn't about justice or reform. It was the result of a mental breakdown. Reports suggest that he had lost touch with his friends and family for 6 months leading up to the attack. This was the act of someone spiraling, not someone standing up for a cause justly. Even in his own writing, he didn't have a clear picture of how the healthcare system worked or why Brian Thompson. And yet online, I've seen people applauding him, people on both sides of the political spectrum calling him a vigilante, a hero. Let me be blunt. This is sick. Murdering someone in cold blood is not heroic. It's not justice. It's a symptom of society that's losing its grip on empathy and rationality. Now let's talk about what this reveals about our society. A lot of the outrage I've seen online comes from a vocal minority according to surveys. Yes, the healthcare system is flawed, deeply flawed, but let's not pretend that the vigilante justice reflects the views of the majority of Americans. Most people don't know the names of healthcare CEOs, let alone advocate for their assassination. The truth is, our healthcare system reflects the choices we've made as a society. I don't feel strongly one way or another about a single-payer healthcare system, but over the years, we've decided that a single-payer system is socialist, inefficient, and effective, or un-American. I've heard all 4 arguments. The result is the system we have today, a system that's often profit-driven, fragmented, and deeply imperfect. If we want change, we need to address it at the root. And that means voting for leaders who prioritize reforming healthcare, supporting policies that align with our values, and advocating for systemic change, however you want those changes to be enacted. And let me repeat one more time, I'm not here to defend the healthcare system and people's frustrations with it. I get paid well with what the system generates, but I also want people to have access to more affordable care, however that may happen. That's why I believe in constructive action, not violence, not outrage, and certainly not murder. What concerns me the most is the lack of empathy I've seen in these discussions. People who have never heard of Brian Thompson until 3 weeks ago are suddenly celebrating his death as if it's some kind of victory. All it does really is further divide us. It's a tragedy. It's a reflection on a system that needs change, but also as a society that's increasingly turning misplaced anger and violence instead of constructive solution. If you or anyone you know want to change the healthcare system, they need to channel their frustration into real change, not into destruction. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this thought-provoking, please like and subscribe. I usually focus on money and career development and a bunch of other topics, but I felt this story was too important, especially with my background, to not at least bring up here. So let's keep the conversation going. I would love your thoughts in the comment, even if you strongly disagree with me here.